If you were born in the early 2000s, chances are you grew up watching Pirates of the Caribbean. Those were good times, weren't they? Following the stories of all these great characters. Captain Jack Sparrow, Will Turner, Elizabeth Swann, Captain Barbossa, Davy Jones, Cutler Beckett. I mean, it was awesome, right? Right? I only ask twice because for years now, when I've seen people discuss Pirates of the Caribbean, they speak as if Pirates 2 and 3, Dead Man's Chest and At World's End belong with Pirates 4 and 5, saying stuff like, God, that first movie. To which I say, what the f***?
What a great first film.
Yep, and there are some other films too.
Now, after Pirates 5, I think people do generally look back and give the original trilogy more respect as a whole. Kind of like how the Disney Star Wars sequels have made people look back more favourably on the prequels. I say screw you. The prequels sucked then, and they suck now. And the Pirates Trilogy was awesome then, and it's awesome now. I see why there's a slight disconnect between the first Pirates of the Caribbean and its following two sequels. That first movie has great pacing, and it is by all means a complete story. Dead Man's Chest and At World's End is one big story, and the scope is enormous in comparison to the first movie. I can see why some people may not be in the mood for a big two-part epic. I'm okay with that. You do you. I have nothing against these people.
I like to wave at them as they pass by.
I don't want to spend too much time covering the first movie, as I've already made a video dedicated entirely to it. It's fantastic. You can tell after the first film's success that Disney more or less gave them unlimited access to the Disney Vault, and it shows. The production value of these movies is incredible, but that's just a nice bonus. I really love Dead Man's Chest and At World's End because it builds upon the first movie by taking the relationships and bonds that are formed between Will, Elizabeth, Jack, and others, and it does something extremely interesting. Instead of strengthening these bonds, it challenges them. These two movies present its characters with something they might value more than loyalty, and it asks them, what about now? As I said, the stakes of these two films simply enormous.
My vessel is magnificent and fierce and huge-ish.
And Dead Man's Chest lets you know from the title card that you are in for something seismic. Hearing that heartbeat thumping as the titles appear, which essentially becomes the driving force for these two films. Even the opening scene of Will and Elizabeth's wedding day being destroyed, all the characters from the first movie facing consequences for their actions, or even their inactions, for some of them. And damn, I just have to point this out now, so it will hit harder later by comparison. These movies are absolutely beautiful. The world feels real and lived in. It doesn't feel like a movie set. It's challenging to point out the biggest problem in Pirates 4 and 5, as there's just so many. It's tough to just focus in on one. But a huge problem is how inconsistent the characters are to how they were presented in the original trilogy. Jack Sparrow, for example, is as fantastic as ever in Dead Man's Chest and At World's End. I love this scene where he goes to this really scary prison, a place pirates are usually taken to be tortured until death, and he just goes in and out almost nonchalantly, just for a drawing of a key. A drawing. It just shows how Jack Sparrow operates on a different plane to the average pirate.
In a fair fight, I'd kill you.
And that's not much incentive for me to fight fair then, is it?
That prison is truly horrifying. I'm surprised he didn't give Dead Man's Chest an R rating, honestly. But it's more or less a joke to Jack Sparrow. It's not an issue at all. Compare that to Jack being imprisoned in Pirates 4, all because he didn't predict that his sketchy driver would double cross him. Now, Jack has spent his fair amount of time in the brig or in prison throughout the first three films, but most of the time it is a calculated move. Jack's foresight is incredible, especially in At World's End. The way he gets everyone into position for the final act, that gives him the best chance of success.
If you wish to see its grand architect, look to your left.
I love how Dead Man's Chest builds up to Davy Jones for over an hour before finally allowing the audience to see him. You believe he is a force to be reckoned with before even seeing him. Jack Sparrow is genuinely terrified of him, so much so that Jack is completely off his game for the entire movie. Compare that with Blackbeard or Salazar. They hold no weight, they're mere placeholders. When Jack tricks Will into meeting with Davy Jones, there's something so haunting about how Jack tells the crew to douse the lamps once Will is off the ship. It tells you all you need to know about Davy Jones. You do not want to end up on his radar. There's a really great video by a channel called Filmento that talks about how the shifting power dynamics in these movies really enhances the excitement. And he's so right. It's not just about who can beat who in a sword fight. There's bargains and deals being agreed upon between various parties that often overlap or even contradict with others. On paper, the hierarchy goes Davy Jones, the Pirates, then Cutler Beckett, the East India Trading Company. But that hierarchy is constantly in flux throughout Pirates 2 and 3. And it's just so much fun. The villain motivations are all really strong in those first 3 movies, by Gore Verbinski. Beckett wants the dead man's chest so he can control Jones, and thus take control of the sea. Beckett laughs at freedom. He doesn't believe it truly exists. Or maybe he just couldn't find freedom in his own life, and he feels a certain resentment or envy for people like Jack Sparrow, people who embody freedom. In many ways, Cutler Beckett is the antithesis of Jack Sparrow, a man who embodies freedom. I like to imagine that at some point, Cutler Beckett also sought out or dreamed of freedom, but could never attain it, so he just bent the knee to societal norms. I think Beckett is deeply insecure, and for his world to make sense, he has to prove to himself that freedom is an illusion, that he hasn't wasted his life. And Jones's villainy is rooted in something much deeper: love and betrayal. He fell in love with an ocean goddess who charged him with the duty of guiding the souls of those who perished at sea to the afterlife, with the promise that in 10 years' time, they would be together. He did the job. All who died at sea, he was there to guide them to the other side. And when it finally came time for them to be together, she wasn't there. He thinks the world is cruel, and he feels the need to inflict the same cruelty on others, perhaps to make them feel a fraction of the pain that he felt when he was betrayed. I could go on and on about all of the things I love in these movies, but if I want to be fair here, I should at least mention some of the stuff I don't like or would change. I really like the darker tone Dead Man's Chest was going for, but I feel like the whole Cannibal Island portion of the movie doesn't really fit tonally the rest of the movie. I would have amped up the horror of the island a lot more. Yes, this movie had to be kept PG-13 or below, but they were already doing some pretty graphic stuff in the movie. You can do a lot by just implying stuff. They do this a little bit, like when Will asks where the rest of the crew are, and Gibbs responds with,
"These cages we're in weren't built till after we got here."
I also think that whole sequence just stalled the pacing of the movie. It felt like a side quest. I think they could have done the whole Calypso plotline a bit better. I wasn't really sold on Zhao Feng as a character, same with his crew. There really isn't a whole lot here to complain about in the original trilogy. I love how all the main characters evolve over the course of the trilogy, and I love how they all have their own individual motivations. Jack is riddled with fear of Davy Jones and Dead Man's Chest, but once he has spent some time in Davy Jones's locker and gets rescued, that fear mostly goes away. He has seen how scary endless nothingness can be.
No wind.
In At World's End, Jack is totally content with staying out of the fight, to let everyone else go off and get killed. He can't go back to the locker. But then he sees Jones's Kraken washed up on the shore, dead. This was also something Jack once feared, but it represented something to him. This fantastical ocean beast, laying lifeless on the shore, represents the death of piracy. This is when Jack decides that a world ran by Cutler Beckett is not a world he wants to live in. It's a world he can't live in. Pirates of the Caribbean 4 on Stranger Tides is pretty far removed from the original trilogy. There is very little continuation from those first 3 films. I would say this movie isn't as offensive to the Pirates franchise as its successor is. The movie feels like it's just going through the motions. Best way I can describe it is that it feels like video game bonus content, like some little DLC a company adds to their main game after a few months. It's fine, but this didn't try as hard. If I could give this movie any compliments, I would say that at least the characterization of the main characters is somewhat intact. Emphasis on somewhat. I still think that overall, everyone is downgraded quite a bit. Jack does have opportunities to display his wit and intelligence, but they also put him in positions where he looks uncharacteristically stupid. I really hate that escape scene from the start of the movie, where he's talking with the King of England. Jack's escapes have always been cunning, but here it just seems like something out of Looney Tunes. For 3 movies now, Master Gibbs has been a fantastic secondary character, but in this movie, he's absolutely thrown aside, and it's a damn shame. When we first meet Barbossa in this movie, it is a serious shock at first, but I actually do think this is what he would have done given his circumstance. He does what he has to do to survive. It's a very weird choice to me to have sunk the Black Pearl and kill all the crew off screen, somewhere between Pirates 3 and 4. I can only liken it to Alien 3 when they killed Newt and Hicks off screen. A lot of the Black Pearl's crew were just stand-in background actors, but there were a few in the crew who were given significant screen time in the first 3 films, and we're left to assume that they're just dead. However, there were 2 characters I assumed were dead, as we saw them join the crew of the Black Pearl at the end of Pirates 3. But imagine my surprise when they showed up in Pirates 5. I guess you could make the argument some of the crew got off at the next port after Barbossa left Jack stranded again.
Il little muerta, remember? You shot me. No, I didn't.
I think it was the right call to go with Blackbeard as the movie's villain, and by all means, Ian McShane has a great presence. The problem here though is in the writing. Jack doesn't have any fear of Blackbeard, so it's very hard for the audience to be scared of him. And yes, villains don't have to be scary to be good villains, but Blackbeard was well known for his intimidation tactics. His entire persona is about incepting fear into the hearts of his enemies. He's also just not a very smart man. He doesn't listen to people who have better ideas than him. He has nothing interesting going on at all. Compare that with this Davy Jones scene where Jack is about to stab his heart. Jones isn't one to beg. He's not going to stand there pleading for Jack not to kill him. He says Jack has a cruel mind, but he takes this opportunity to show Jack what real cruelty looks like. He knows that Jack Sparrow will gladly stab the heart and become the captain of the Flying Dutchman, getting to sail the seas for eternity. So Jones stabs Will, knowing Jack cares for his life. Jack is a master manipulator and even con man, but here Jones calls his bluff. He's standing right between him and Will, knowing full well that Jack will want Will stab the heart. He's laughing at Jack as he holds his heart in the palm of his hands. Jack is normally about 5 steps ahead of everyone, but in this case, he is knocked down to a level playing field. Jones can challenge Jack on a physical, but more importantly, a mental level. Inversely, Jack never takes Blackbeard seriously. He is convinced he can eventually manipulate this senile old man. It's just a matter of waiting for the opportune moment. All in all, it wasn't a bad time rewatching this movie. It isn't grossly offensive. It doesn't spit all over the franchise. Pirates of the Caribbean 5 Dead Men Tell No Tale betrays the franchise and its audience on every level. Remember how I said Stranger Tides was poorly written, but at least the characters were somewhat preserved in essence from the original trilogy? Yeah, well, this movie doesn't even have that going for it. This is a character assassination of so many beloved characters. It doesn't seem like any of the original cast members give a fuck at this point, besides maybe Jeffrey Rush, but my god, he is given such slop to work with.
You look marvellous. Got quite the spring in your step. Has your leg grown back?
To be fair to Johnny Depp, I don't think he was in the best mental or physical state around the time of filming, but he does seem pretty checked out here. Orlando Bloom back as Will Turner. He's not committed at all. He's not in character. It's not all his fault. He's barely in the movie. They probably flew him in for a weekend to shoot his scenes and sent him a hefty check. And my god, that scene at the end with Elizabeth is hilarious. The way she was just waiting past the brow of that hill to do this dramatic entrance for Will. But look, the actors aren't the big issue here. The characters just aren't even written in character to begin with. There's a great video by a channel called My Little Thought Tree, where they go over another video by a channel called Cinema Therapy, who basically diagnosed Jack Sparrow with antisocial personality disorder, giving him traits such as egocentric, a focus on personal gain, lacks an internal moral compass relative to socially ethical behavior, a lack of concern for the feelings, needs, and suffering of others, impulsive, and often going into things without a plan.
You've been planning this from the beginning. Ever since you learned my name. Yeah.
While I think cinema therapy gets some things right, I will also side with my little thought tree and say that overall, I disagree with cinema therapy's take on Jack Sparrow as a character. And it's worth noting that cinema therapy mainly analyzes the original trilogy in that video, with little snippets here and there from the other films. Look, at the end of the day, this is a fictional character. For all we know, a person like Jack Sparrow doesn't actually exist, a person with similar traits, so I think it's fine to misdiagnose movie characters. It's only a bit of fun, and they're entitled to their opinion. It seems like they're sticking to their diagnosis, which is fair enough. I really don't want to sound like I'm hating on these guys. Their videos are actually pretty good, from what I've seen. I will say that I think the guys at Cinema Therapy made a diagnosis because they're seeing the Jack Sparrow that he wants people to see, if that makes sense. Jack does put on a facade when interacting with people. He is a master manipulator. And I feel like if you're not paying attention as a viewer, this facade is all you're going to see too.
You actually were telling the truth. I do that quite a lot. Your people are always surprised.
With that in mind, I feel like the Jack Sparrow we got in Pirates 5 is Jack Sparrow if he was written by the guys at Cinema Therapy. I just think they missed all the little nuances of Jack's character. Yes, Jack is somewhat egocentric, and to some degree he does show a lack of concern with people around him. He doesn't seem too bothered by half his crew being killed by cannibals. But you have to take into account that Jack was mutinied upon by his last crew. They left him on an island to die, and sailed away on his beloved Pearl. By default, Jack doesn't trust people. For him to show concern, you must earn his respect, and you must earn his trust. Jack shows great concern for Will and Elizabeth. In At World's End, Jack gives up immortality to save Will's life. Cinema Therapy, in their video, also got into irresponsibility, but I didn't really buy their argument here. They mention how Jack owes so much money to people he's borrowed from, but I wouldn't really attribute this to being irresponsible. I would pin this more on the pirate code Jack lives by, the thing all pirates live by. Take what you can, and
Give nothing back.
although it was pretty irresponsible of him to make that initial deal with Davy Jones in the first place. To sail 13 years captain of the Black Pearl, and then join Jones's crew afterwards. But maybe that just speaks more to Jack's love of the Pearl. Would he sign a deal with the devil to rescue her from the depths? Clearly the answer was yes. I love the scene in Dead Man's Chest where Elizabeth tricks Jack and handcuffs him to the Pearl to be bait for the Kraken. Elizabeth has effectively sentenced him to death. And what does he say? He smiles and says, "Pirate." That is a compliment from Jack Sparrow. He is clearly devastated here by the betrayal, but he also has to respect it.
You give it 1 hour, maybe 2, keep a weather eye open and you will see white sails on that horizon.
There'll be no living with her after this.
To also say that Jack is impulsive and often goes into things without a plan is just ridiculous. Jack is very intelligent and a great strategist. He evaluates his situation and plans out a roadmap for how to come to the optimal conclusion. And his plans often come to fruition because he is so good at predicting the actions of others. You see, it doesn't really matter how prepared you are. You also must consider what your opponents are thinking. What moves can they make? And which moves they are likely to take. Jack can run complex simulations in his mind. This is not some mystical power. He just makes very accurate predictions. He is often considered lucky because everything seems to fall into his lap. But no, he has probably planned for this. Looking at World's End, Jack is solely responsible for getting the pirates into the best possible position to enter battle with Beckett. He is the grand architect of the entire movie. Everyone in that final act is there because Jack Sparrow wants them there. The way Jack lures Beckett to Shipwreck Cove is just genius. It is established earlier in the movie that when Beckett holds Jack's compass, it points to Jack. The compass points to what you want most. When Jack sees that Will is leaving a breadcrumb trail for Beckett, he just thinks, oh, I've got a better idea. He hands Will his compass and pushes him overboard, knowing full well that Beckett will ultimately end up with that compass in his hands, and it will lead him and his fleet straight to Jack. Also, I love this. Jack was just waiting there very confidently for Will to escape the brig. This whole strange scenario here was just the next stop on Jack's roadmap. The negotiation scene in That World's End between the pirates, Beckett and Jones is also brilliant. When Jack realizes he's going to be taken aboard the Flying Dutchman, he knows that Barbossa still requires his piece of 8 to complete the ritual and hopefully free Calypso. Jack also has the freeing of Calypso in his game plan. So what does he do? He takes off his hat and does this weird random bow towards Barbossa, as if he's giving a farewell. To Jones and Beckett, this little display here might seem like arrogance. What he's really doing here is giving Barbossa a clear shot at swiping his piece of it off of him before he's taken. Jack is intelligent and very aware of his environment. In Dead Men Tell No Tale, Jack is portrayed as a clumsy idiot from the very start. They are now portraying him as lucky, instead of the extremely methodical strategist he once was. I seriously don't think that Jack shows a single inkling of foresight in Pirates 5. He has very little impact on the plot. Jack is a master manipulator, right? That's one of his highest skill sets. But in Pirates of the Caribbean 5, Barbossa, of all people, is filling that role for him. Jack is just drifting aimlessly from point A to point B. He doesn't have a roadmap. He is unable to maintain the respect of his crew, where in past movies, you could convince them that a drawing of a key had value. A drawing.
So, we're going after this key. You're not making any sense at all.
He is just pathetic now.
Do we even have a ship? A crew? Pants?
I also find it very weird that in this movie, Jack has become the thing the villain wants. In every other movie, even Pirates 4, the villain wants something else, and Jack is just an obstacle, a competitor if you will. But in this movie, he is an object.
I will never set foot in this town again, sir. You mark my words.
The two new main characters are both instantly unlikable. Henry just comes across as some know-it-all who thinks that he knows better than grown men. We have no reason to believe him other than the fact that he's the main character in this movie. And Karina, dear God, what can I say about her? This is a character that was written in a very bad period for Hollywood. She's that strong female character type, you know the one. It seems like Hollywood is slowly dialing it back on this stuff, but it's just so bad in this movie. Just the sheer arrogance of her is enough to make your eyes roll.
We haven't got much time. The dead are sailing straight for us.
Is that so?
Yes, I've spoken to them.
You've spoken to them? Have you spoken to Krakens and mermaids?
Her first scene is a prison escape, and while she's being pressured to confess her crimes, she gives some stupid little one-liner as she picks the lock. Because of course she can do that. And of course, she can overpower an armed guard. I really don't get pleasure talking about this kind of stuff in movies, so I'm gonna go about it in an indirect way, by comparing Karina to Elizabeth. When we first meet Elizabeth, she is super flouncy. She's a rich girl, daughter of the governor. When pirates come to kidnap her, it's a really scary thing for her. She hides in a closet to avoid them. She knows she can't go toe-to-toe with a pirate. The Pirates Trilogy gradually builds Elizabeth up over time. Barbossa doesn't want to admit that they kidnapped her for the medallion, so she dangles it over the water and threatens to drop it. Barbossa and the crew try playing it cool at first, but as soon as she gives the chain a bit of slack, they all jump forward. She has just bested an entire ship full of pirates. Elizabeth is constantly in danger throughout the franchise, and at one point a pirate lord even tries to force himself on her. The movies make it very clear that it's very unorthodox for a female to be in this environment, and that isn't sexist, it's just reality. But over time, Elizabeth learns to fit within this environment, and she actually thrives in it. She is even elected as King of the Pirates, for God's sake, courtesy of Jack. After such a gradual build-up, as a viewer, you have no issue at all with her eventually kicking ass in the third film. She's earned that. Karina, though, is just fantastic from the very beginning, and we have to just accept that. I mean, even as she's about to be hanged, she tells this wild crowd to shut up, and they all just immediately zip it, let her speak. Elizabeth in her first movie wouldn't have gotten a single word in. It takes time to gain the respect of others. You can't just instantly command it. The movie really is hitting you over the head with this character, and it makes such a point of her being a female, and how women are oppressed in this world. It's ridiculous. Karina brings it up herself on multiple occasions, and the plot of the story itself is presented in a way that a resolution can only be reached or attained with the guidance of a female, like it would be impossible without a woman, when in reality it's irrelevant. All they needed was that book and the ability to navigate by using the stars. Because Karina is an astronomer slash horologist, She is apparently the only one capable of doing this. These are f***ing pirates. Are you seriously trying to tell me that these pirates wouldn't know how to follow the stars? Are you out of your f***ing mind?
But this map has never been seen nor read by any man.
Luckily, I'm a woman.
Oh dear.
I'll just quickly glance over a few of the things I actually liked before I get into the more stupid stuff. I did laugh at...
You're the evil spawn of them two. Does Mummy ever ask about me? No.
But that was more in-depth delivery though. And I also laughed at the horizontally reclined joke, when Karina asked one of the crew if their mother is academically inclined.
More like horizontally reclined.
That's it. That is all of the enjoyment I got out of this movie. I just want to quickly speedrun through all the stupid stuff in this movie. Why is Will Turner all barnacle? That's only supposed to happen to the crew of the Dutchman if they don't do their job ferrying souls to the afterlife. We have no reason to believe that Will stop doing this job. After Jones was gone, the crew seemed committed to the task, and Will wasn't holding anyone captive like Jones was. They were free to go whenever they wanted. Why cover Javier Bardem in all this CGI? Why even go for this weird visual gimmick that he constantly looks like he's underwater because he died underwater? There is absolutely no reason for this other than having this weird visual gimmick, like he's some James Bond villain. And why does Salazar just assume that Henry is searching for Jack Sparrow because there are wanted posters of Jack in the brig that are coincidentally next to Henry? That bank robbery scene is utterly ridiculous. It's like something you'd see in Lego Pirates of the Caribbean, but I don't think even Lego would stoop to such a moronic set piece. You could compare it to the turning wheel set piece from Dead Man's Chest, but that was all in good fun, and it was actually executed with a bit of grace. It didn't even feel that far-fetched for the world of Pirates of the Caribbean, but going from robbing a bank to literally robbing a bank, using horses to drag the entire building off its foundation. Need I say any more? When Henry returns to the mainland, he's arrested for having ripped sleeves. A sailor's sleeves are ripped when they commit treason. Surely this f***ing know-it-all would have tossed that jacket away at some point. No? The movie tells us that the reason Salazar is free from the Devil's Triangle is because, quote, Jack betrayed the compass, and the compass releases your greatest fear once it's betrayed. You could make an argument here that Jack already betrayed it multiple times in the earlier movies. You could also argue he didn't really betray it in earlier movies, because he always intended on getting it back. But how does Salazar even know this? How does he know that Jack's compass is the key to his escape? He never had any knowledge of the compass. It makes no sense.
Jack Sparrow has given away the compass.
What?
What?
They give Jack's crew in Pirates 5 too much to say. Yes, in earlier movies, Jack's crew were mostly just background actors, but now in this movie, he's got a much smaller crew, so they had to give these characters lines. It's like giving an NPC dialogue. Salazar would want the satisfaction of killing Jack with his own blade. Sending the sharks after them was literally just to get a cool scene. That's when you know a movie has nothing to say. It's just doing things for the sake of short-term stimulus, rather than going for something that will leave an impression.
You burned all the food, the shade, the rum.
Yes, the rum is gone.
Why is the rum gone?
Karina being revealed as Barbossa's daughter carries no weight. His death was unnecessary. He could have just wiggled down that chain and fended Salazar off for a little bit. He's the better swordsman and had the high ground. Karina saying,
Barbossa. My name is Barbossa.
just gave me flashbacks from Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. The doohickey of this movie is a trident to Poseidon. It is revealed to us that it contains every ocean curse inside. In this movie, they destroyed it. This right here is a crazy betrayal of the very DNA of this franchise. Every movie has had some sort of ocean curse. This is a mystical world with cursed treasure, ocean goddesses. Davy Jones's locker is a very real place. Things that just can't be explained. That's just part of the wonder of this world. It's part of Pirates of the Caribbean. To remove that from this world just shows so much blatant disregard for the franchise. And to add to this, they don't even stick to their own rules. Once the ocean curses are broken, Will Turner, right, we all know Will, can somehow go back and resume his former life with Elizabeth and his wonderful son. Question, did the folks who made Pirates 5 even watch the other movies? Will Turner's heart is in a fucking box. If his curse is lifted, he dies. That curse was the only thing keeping him alive. And the same goes for that pathetic Davy Jones tease in the post-credit scene. He is dead, with or without a curse. What are you even doing, Disney? It blows my mind that this is the same studio that hired Gore Verbinski to make the original trilogy. Jerry Bruckheimer, a big producer on the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, has recently stated that they're planning to do a franchise reboot. And to be honest, I really don't know if this is their call or not. While I do love the majority of the movies in the Pirates franchise so far, the damage that has been dealt as a result of Pirates 5, to me at least, is irreversible. It completely fucked their Pirates world. I don't think Bruckheimer is the reason for Pirates of the Caribbean's success. This was always Gore Verbinski's world. Before him, Pirates of the Caribbean was just a theme park attraction, and in his absence, the franchise has caved in on itself. Reboot if you want, but if you go into this new reboot with the exact same approach as you did for Pirates 4 and 5, you guys are screwed. Yes, the last film still made decent money, but it was a pretty big drop from the previous film. I wonder how much more that beloved box office will drop if you keep making garbage. My advice is to go ahead and reboot. A lot of people say they won't watch Pirates of the Caribbean without Johnny Depp, but Depp and Disney are not on the best of terms. As fans, we probably need to just let go. We likely won't ever see Jack Sparrow again, and honestly, after that absolute character assassination, I don't even know if I want to see him again. He's no longer the character we all fell in love with. They don't understand why people liked him. If Disney does do a reboot, they should do their best to distance themselves from previous characters and storylines. You absolutely cannot recast Jack Sparrow. People will not let you get away with that. Johnny Depp might never come back, but he will forever be Captain Jack Sparrow. So you should just erase everything, create new characters, and tell new stories, and find a director who has a vision for a new Pirates world. Sign the checks and stay out of their way.